Hello, and welcome to the Godot community for High School Visual Art 3D. For this session, I'm joined by Sahira Dean to discuss what is arts integration, mindful arts integration, and how art can be integrated with other content areas. I want to start my discussion about arts integration by relaying a story that actually happened to me a couple weeks ago. I was sitting in a restaurant waiting for a to-go order, and I received a call from a friend of mine who had taken an adult ceramics class that I had taught a couple years ago, and he was doing some work at his studio in his home and had run short on clay, and he had been making a slab box and he only had enough clay for 3 sides instead of 4. And so we had a discussion that first started with talking about using rectangles versus trapezoids, and then when you're moving from a 4-sided box to a 3-sided box, starting instead of with on a right angle, you would think in terms of an equilateral triangle for your base. And when I got off the phone, there was a gentleman who had also been waiting for a to-go order. He looked at me and he said, "Are you a math teacher?" And I said, "No, I'm an art teacher." And he looked at me kind of funny because the conversation on his end seemed like I was talking about a lot of geometry, which I absolutely was. And so when I started thinking about this topic of what art integration is, I think that it's something that we're doing in our classes all the time. So when you hear the term arts integration, you may think it doesn't apply to the arts classroom because we integrate art into everything. But I think that the difference is, are we being thoughtful and meaningful about it? The best definition that I've found is the one on this slide from the Kennedy Center, which is that students meet dual learning objectives when they engage in the creative process to explore connections between an art form and another subject area to gain a greater understanding in both. So it's not that you have to focus, you're not necessarily turning your class into a math classroom or turning your class into a science or social studies classroom, but maybe making the students aware of when they are using that knowledge that they have gained in their other courses and applying it to what they're doing in the art classroom. Let's think about the first half of that definition. I think dual learning objectives really indicates that the idea here is that the arts integration is inclusive of both art standards and standards from other disciplines. This means that the integration is done, again, purposefully and with the intent that students are aware of what they are doing. The second part that indicates that students are making connections is also really important. Instead of understanding arts as a way that a social studies or a lit teacher is teaching their curriculum through teaching an art project, I consider how I am teaching content in a way that is connected with other disciplines. I think interdisciplinary connections, again, are really natural to us as art teachers. I probably, when most of us introduce a new lesson, there's a history or social studies component. Asking students to write about their work or the work of others, having them write artist statements, etc., certainly covers a literacy component. But we're really doing much more than that. I think that for arts integration to be successful, again, students need to be aware of that connection they are making with knowledge that they are using that is applied cross-curricularly. The why of arts integration, to me, aids in the understanding of both practical and conceptual areas. Students gain an understanding of how art doesn't have to be an abstract concept or that it's innate ability, and how knowledge of math and science and literature and social studies, etc., are art making skills. Students gain a greater understanding of the contextual nature in which artworks are created and the purposes of the artworks, They are learning about diverse cultures, more in-depth understanding of processes and engineering, chemistry, etc. Also, whenever students are able to connect what they know or learn in one class to another, there is reinforcement. Lastly, arts integration serves as a method for diverse learners who may have challenges expressing knowledge by traditional means, an opportunity to demonstrate it through a more visual nature.
Hi, my name is Sahira Dean. I'm the virtual PLC lead for High School 2D Art. In this part of our presentation, I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about mindful arts integration, which, essentially is incorporating curricula beyond the arts into your classroom as an art educator. This is definitely something that I think art educators are well aware that they do pretty naturally. So if you think about instances where you have had students to write or use math, or think about science, or even psychology for that matter, into different class assignments or visual prompts or writing prompts or art prompts. All that is you incorporating other curricula into your own classroom. So I think the biggest takeaway is doing this in a way to where you're more intentional about how you incorporate other curricula into your classroom. So for example, as opposed to asking students to find the center of a paper by simply folding in half, well, another way or another approach might be for students to take out their ruler and measure the width and the height of the paper. Do the division and asking them to do the division or the math that it takes to find the center of the paper. So definitely there are a lot more steps in that particular example, but students are also referring to previous math knowledge in terms of uh, doing that particular task that you asked them to do. Another important thing about mindful arts integration is allowing yourself to help the student to make connections to careers. So for example, if you think about architecture, which incorporates a lot of math, or if you think about students that go on to graduate to become medical illustrators for different textbooks, which incorporate science, or if you think about industrial design, the math that it takes to be an industrial designer, or even an engineer for that matter, just the creative thinking involved in that. So also, if you have an assignment where you're asking students to take on the task of designing a chair out of cardboard that will also hold the weight of a 100-pound or a 200-pound adult, what kind of engineering and planning and creativity and math and even science, if they're thinking about like gravity, would it take for them to do that task successfully? So the bigger connection for students is, so the biggest importance and takeaway for students is to realize, they are using all these different tools that they have under their belt in the art classroom to be able to go on and make good choices in careers and professions that they might be interested in later on in life. On the following slides, you'll see some examples from Heather and I's classroom where curricula beyond the arts was taken and used in support of different art projects.